Don't forget to subscribe. Afterwards, the wisest and most spiritual books from the greatest authors await you every day. And now buckle up, sit back and we'll begin. Hazrat Inayat Khan. The mysticism of music, sound and word. The voice. The voice is not only indicative of man's character, but it is the expression of the spirit. The voice is not only audible, but also visible to those who can see it. The voice makes impressions on the ethereal spheres, impressions which can be called audible. At the same time they are visible. Those scientists who have made experiments with sound and who have taken impressions of the sound on certain plates which impressions appear like forms, will find one day that the impression of the voice is more living, more deep, and has a greater effect. Sound can be louder than the voice, but sound cannot be more living than the voice. Knowing this, the Hindus of ancient times said that singing is the first art, playing the second art, and dancing the third art which make music. The Hindus who have found that by these three different aspects of music one attains to spirituality much sooner than by any other way, have discovered that the shortest way to attain spiritual heights is by singing. Therefore the greatest prophets of the Hindus were singers. Narada and Tambara. Narada inspired Valmiki, who wrote the Ramayana and the Mahabharata, the great Hindu scriptures. There are three principal kinds of voices: the Jalal voice, the Jamal voice, and the Kamal voice. The Jalal voice indicates power, the Jamal voice indicates beauty, the Kamal voice indicates wisdom. If you take careful notice in everyday life, you will find that sometimes before a person has finished his sentence you have become annoyed. It is not because of what he has said, but it is his voice. And you will also notice, perhaps not every day in your life but sometimes, that you once heard someone say something that has always remained with you. It gives always a beautiful feeling, it is always soothing, it is healing, it is uplifting, it is inspiring. A doctor coming to see a patient may, by his voice, frighten the patient and make him more ill if his voice is not harmonious. And another doctor may, by his voice, treat the patient so that before the medicine is brought he is already feeling better. The doctor gives the medicine, but it is the voice with which he comes to the patient that counts. In the history of the world, have not men marched hundreds of miles with strength and vigor, not knowing what they were going to face, on hearing the voice of their commander? Quick march. It seemed that all fear, all anxiety were taken away, and all vigor and courage were given to them, as they were going to march. And again, have you not heard of commanders who said, "Fire," and the soldiers turned back and fired at them? That is the voice too. The voice, therefore, is a wine. It may be the best wine, or it may be the worst liquor. It may make a person ill, or it may uplift him. There are 5 different qualities of the voice, which are connected with the peculiar character of the person. The earth quality of the voice is hope-giving, encouraging, tempting. The water quality is intoxicating, soothing, healing, uplifting. The fire quality is impressive, arousing, exciting, horrifying. At the same time it is awakening, because very often warning is given in the voice of the fire quality. The use of the words tongues of flame in the Old Testament is narrative of that voice and word which were warning of coming dangers. It was alarming for the people to awaken from their sleep, to awaken to a greater consciousness, to a higher consciousness. Then there is the air quality of the voice. It is uplifting, raising a person, taking him far, far away from the plane of the earth. And the ether quality of the voice is inspiring, healing, peace-giving, harmonizing, convincing, appealing. At the same time it is most intoxicating. Every Jalal voice, Jamal voice, or Kamal voice has one or another of these 5 qualities predominant in it, and according to that it creates an effect. The most wonderful part in the study of voice is that from the voice you can find out a man's particular evolution, his stage of evolution. You do not need to see the person, just his voice will tell you where he is, how far he has evolved. There is no doubt that the character of the person is apparent, is evident, in his voice. There is another most wonderful thing to be found in the science of the voice. That the fortunate person has a different voice from the one who is not so fortunate. If you gather 5 persons who have really proved to be most fortunate, and you hear their voices, you will find what great difference there is between their voice and the ordinary voice. When you compare the voice of great people, no matter what their line may be, with the voice of others, you will find that there is a difference. But what is meant here is the speaking voice. When we come to singing, it is quite different, because today the art of singing has become as artificial as can be. The whole idea is to train the voice and make it different from what it is naturally. The training of the voice does not develop what is natural in it, it mostly brings into it something which is not natural to it. Therefore, when a person sings according to the method of the day, he has a different voice. It is not his voice, it is not his character. He may have a great success, he may be audible to thousands of people, but at the same time he is not singing in his natural voice. Therefore, the real character of the person is to be seen in his speaking voice. Then there is another thing to be understood. That is the softness and the loudness of the voice, that there are times when the voice is softer, and there are times when the voice is louder. Naturally, that shows the condition of the spirit at that particular time, because sometimes the spirit is tender, and with the tenderness of the spirit the voice becomes softened. Sometimes the spirit is harder, and with the hardness of the spirit the voice becomes hardened. In order to scold a person, you do not need to put on a hard voice, the voice becomes hard naturally. In order to sympathize with a person, in order to express your gratitude, your love, your devotion, your affection to someone, you do not need to soften your voice. Your voice is soft before you can feel it, before you can think about it. This shows that the voice is an expression of the spirit. If the spirit is soft, the voice is soft. If the spirit is hard, the voice is hard. If the spirit is powerful, then the voice has power. If the spirit has lost its vigor, then the voice loses its power. Furthermore, I should like to tell you an amusing thing on this subject. Sometimes a person comes to you and begins to speak about something, and then he says, HMM. Next he says another word and then continues to say, HMM. It may be that he has a cold, but it may be that he has not. Yet that time he is doing this. Why? Because there is something that he is bringing forth from his mind, and it does not come quickly. The same condition that is going on in the spirit is manifesting in the voice. He wants to say something, but he cannot say it. The voice does not operate because the mind is not operating. If in the mind there is some obstacle, some hindrance, then in the voice there is also something hindering. Inspiration chooses its own voice, and when a speaker has to change his voice in accordance with the hall where he is going to speak, then inspiration is lost. Because when the inspiration begins to feel, It is not my voice, it does not come. Then the speaker has to struggle twice. One struggle is that he must speak without inspiration, and the other struggle is that he must be audible to the number of people present. That cannot be done. Nowadays people have adopted a new method of elocution. A person who has learned elocution can shout as loudly as 10 people shouting at the same time, and everyone will think, "How wonderful!" But what impression has it made? None. Nowadays radio technicians have made a kind of horn which they use at stations in the United States. A person takes that horn and on speaking into it his voice becomes 20 times louder. It is all right for trade and business purposes, but when you come to life itself, and when you come to conversation, to speaking to your friends, it is different. It is most psychological occasion when you speak to one person or to many persons, because something is taking place which is its echo in the cosmos. No word ever spoken is lost, it remains, and it vibrates according to the spirit put into it. If a person makes his voice artificial in order to convince people, in order to be more audible, and in order to impress people, it only means he is not true to his spirit. It cannot be. It is better for a person to be natural in his speech with individuals and with the multitude, rather than that he should become different. Now coming to the subject of singing, there are certain things which must be retained in the voice. However much the voice may be developed, however great its volume, however far-reaching it may be and should be made by practice, at the same time one must feel responsible for keeping one's natural voice through every stage of development, that the natural voice is not hurt by it. It does not mean that one should not have a far-reaching voice. It does not mean that one should not have a voice of a larger volume, that one should not have a voice that is vigorous and flexible. Everything that enriches the voice is necessary and must be developed by practice, but all the time keeping in view, I must not sacrifice the natural quality of my voice. For every person, every soul must know that there is no other voice like his. And if that particularity of its own voice which each soul has is lost, then nothing is left with it. Besides this, every person is an instrument in this orchestra which is the whole universe, and his voice is the music that comes from each instrument. Each instrument is made distinct and particular and peculiar, so that no other voice can take the place of that particular voice. If then, with the instrument that God has made and the music that God has intended to be played in the Word, one does not allow that music to be played, and one develops a voice which is not one's own, naturally that is a great cruelty to oneself and to others. For those on the spiritual path, thinkers, students and meditative souls, it is of the greatest importance to know the condition of their spirit from time to time by consulting their voice. That is their barometer. From morning till evening one can see the weather created by oneself. Whether it is warm or cold, or whether it is spring or winter. One's voice is that barometer that shows to us what is coming, because what will come is the reaction, the result of what is created, and the voice is indicative of it. Those who think still more deeply on this subject will be able to see how, step by step, they are progressing in the spiritual path, if only they consult their voice. Every step in the spiritual path brings about a little change. By a distinct study of the voice you will find that it is so. When you go back, you will find by the change of voice. I had gone so much further, and I have gone back again. The voice will tell you. There is another point which is most wonderful about the voice. That once you have worked with the voice and have cultivated it, deepened it, widened it, and it has become invigorated, and then you have left it, you may leave it for months and years, and the voice may take a different shape and a different appearance, but at the same time what you have once developed remains with you somewhere. It is just like a deposit kept in a bank. You do not know of it, you have forgotten it perhaps, yet it is there. The day when you will touch it again, it will come back in the same way, and it will take very little to complete it. If the voice has developed a spiritual quality and one finds later that it has lost that spiritual quality, one must not be discouraged or disappointed. One has not lost it. One must correct oneself and want to go forward again, and be sorry for having gone backward, but never be discouraged, never be hopeless, because it is there, it only wants a little touch. It is just like a little candle which has gone out, but once you strike a match it is lighted again, it is a candle just the same. The voice is light itself. If the light has become dim, it has not gone out, it is there. It is the same with the voice. If it does not shine, it only means that it has not been cultivated. You must cultivate it again, and it will begin to shine again. Question: is it advisable to train one's voice if one has not much of it? Answer: one might ask, is it advisable to do physical exercises when one is very thin? If one is thin, it is even more necessary to do physical exercises. So if there is no voice, it is more necessary that one should develop it. Question: does the voice change through the different ages? Answer: yes. Every age, infancy, childhood, youth, and more advanced age changes the pitch of the voice. The advanced age is an expression of what a person has gained, and so the voice is also indicative of his attainment. No doubt, as with every step in the age of a person, so with every step forward in spiritual evolution, there is also a difference in the voice. Every experience in life is an initiation. Even in the worldly life it is a step forward, and that experience changes the voice. Question: do the words one has spoken in the past continue to affect one's life? Answer: certainly, certainly. Question: which is more powerful, to say something mentally or to say it aloud? Answer: if you say it mentally and do not speak, it is powerful. If you speak and do not say it mentally, it is powerless. If you say it mentally and speak it at the same time, it is most powerful. Question: would you say a few words about the modern art of recitation? Answer: there is little to be said about it. Very often people think that, when they have to recite, they must have a different voice, they must become a different being. A person does not want to remain what he is, he wants to be different. There is nothing more beautiful, nothing more convincing and appealing and impressive than reciting in one's own natural voice. Question: would you tell us how it was that Tansen kindled candles by singing? Answer: it is told that Tansen, the great singer, performed wonders by singing. Tansen was a yogi. He was a singer, but the yogi of singing. He had mastered sound, and therefore the sound of his voice became living, and by his making the voice live, everything that he wanted happened. Very few in this world know to what extent phenomena can be produced by the power of the voice. If there is any real trace of miracle, of phenomena, of wonder, it is the voice. The mystery of sound and color. 1. The attraction one finds in color and in sound makes one wonder if there is a mystery hidden behind them, if there is a language of color and sound which could be learned. And the answer is that the language of color and sound is the language of the soul, and that it is our outer language which makes us confused as to the meaning of that inner language. Color and sound are the language of life. Life expresses itself on all the different planes of existence in the form of color and sound. But the outer manifestations of life are so rigid and dense that the secret of their nature and character is buried underneath. Why is the world called an illusion by the mystics? Because the nature of manifestation is such that it envelops its own secret within itself and appears in such a rigid form that the fineness, beauty and mystery of its character are hidden. Therefore the seekers after the truth of life, the students of life, are of two opposite kinds. The one wishes to learn from outward appearance. The other wishes to find out the secret that is hidden behind it. The one who learns from the external gets the knowledge from the external, which we call science. The one who finds out from the within, from what is hidden in this manifestation, is the mystic. The knowledge he gains is mysticism. The first question that arises in the mind of the intelligent person is, what is it in sound and color that appeals to man? It is the tone and rhythm of color as well as of sound, which have an influence on the tone and rhythm of our being. Our being is our capacity for the resonance of tone and rhythm which comes from sound and color. This capacity enables us to be influenced by sound and color. Thus some have a liking for a certain color, others have a liking for another color, and some are attracted to a certain kind of sound. In singing some are attracted to a baritone or a bass voice, others to a tenor or soprano. There are souls to whom the deep sounds of the cello appeal. There are others who are interested in the sound of the violin. Some enjoy the sound of the horn and the trombone. And others prefer the flute. What does this show? It shows that there is a certain capacity in our hearts, in our beings, and it depends upon that particular capacity what kind of sound appeals to us. At the same time, it depends upon man's grade of evolution, his character, his nature, whether he is gross or fine. Also upon his temperament, whether he has a practical nature or is dreamy, whether he loves the drama of life, or whether he is absorbed in the ordinary things of life. According to man's condition, his temperament and his evolution, color and sound affect him. And the proof of this is that he often changes his fancy in regard to color. There are times when he takes a fancy to blue or he craves for yellow or for orange. There are some who like deep colors, others like light colors. It all depends on their temperament and their grade of evolution. Music of every kind appeals to some person. The best or the worst, somebody likes it. Does one not see how children can enjoy themselves with a little tin can and a stick? The rhythm comes within their capacity of enjoyment. Human nature is like that. It takes in everything, from the highest to the lowest. It has such a wide capacity that there is nothing left out. Everything has its place and everything is assimilated by human nature. At the same time, there is action and inaction. It is not only the grade of evolution that makes man change his fancy for different colors and tones, but it is also the different colors and tones that help him in his evolution. And they change the speed of his evolution. Very often man gives such great importance to color and tone that he forgets what is behind them, and that leads him to many superstitions, fancies and imaginations. Many have fooled simple people by telling them what color belonged to their souls or what note belonged to their lives. Man is always ready to respond to anything that can puzzle him and confuse his mind. He is always willing to be fooled. He enjoys it so much when someone tells him his color is yellow or green, or his note is C, D or F, that he does not care to find out why. It is like telling somebody that Wednesday is his day and Thursday some other person's. In point of fact, all days are ours, all colors are ours. It is man who is the master of all manifestation. It is for man to use all colors and tones. They are at his disposal, for him to make the best use of. It would be a great pity if we were subject to one color or tone. There would be no life in this, it would be a form of death. The staircase is made for us to ascend, and not to remain standing on one step. Every step is our step, if we could only take it. Coming to the mystical point of view, the first aspect that makes intelligence conscious of manifestations is sound. The next aspect is light, color. The proof of this can be found in the Bible, as well as in the Vedanta. The Bible says, "In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was God." And it also says that first was the Word, and then came the light. What is color? It is an aspect of light. We read in the Vedanta that the first aspect of the Creator, the source from which the whole creation was made, was sound. In the Quran it is said, "The first command was be, and it became." In explaining the process of creation, all the mystics and prophets and great thinkers of the world, at all periods of history, have given the first place to sound. And the scientist of today says the same. He will speak of rays, atoms, electrons. And after going through all the different atoms of substance, he arrives at something he calls movement. Movement is vibration. It is only the effect of movement which we call sound. Movement speaks, and we call speech sound when it is audible. When it is not audible, it is because there is no sufficient capacity. But the cause of sound is movement. And movement is always there. This shows that the existence of the movement does not depend upon capacity. Color also is movement. And its capacity makes color concrete to our vision. At the same time, although we may call a color green or red or yellow, every color is different to each person. In fine shades of color, people do not see alike because the capacity is different in each of them. The tone is according to the capacity. In other words, tones or colors have not got different values, but to us they become different when we sense them or feel them. In relation to us they are different. The conception of the five elements, which the mystics have always had, cannot be explained in scientific terms because the mystics have their own peculiar meaning. Although the elements may be called earth, water, fire, air and ether, this must not be taken literally. Their nature and character, according to the mystics, are different. But, as words are few, one cannot give other names to these elements, although in Sanskrit, we have distinctive words for them. Ether is not ether in the scientific sense. It is capacity. Water is not water as we understand it in everyday language. It is liquidity. Fire is understood differently. It means glow or heat, dryness, radiance, all that is living. All of these words suggest something more than is ordinarily meant by them. The working of these five elements is distinguished by different colors and sounds. The five elements are represented by sound. In the musical scales or ragas of India and China, the raga of 5 notes is considered the most appealing. And my own experience is that the scale of 5 notes is much more appealing than the scale of 7 notes. The scale of 7 notes lacks some vital influence which the scale of 5 notes possesses. There is a relation between sound and color. In reality, they are one. They are two aspects of life. Life and light are one. Life is light and light is life, and so color is sound and sound color. Only, when sound is color it is most visible and least audible, and when color is sound, it is most audible and least visible. One can find the unity of color and sound by studying and practicing the science of breath. When one hears something, one's first tendency is to open one's eyes, to try to see the color of it. That is not the way to see it, although color is a language. The very life which is audible is visible also. But where? It is visible on the inner plane. The mistake is that man looks for it on the outer plane. When he hears music, he wants to see the color before him. Every activity of the outer world is a kind of reaction, in other words, a shadow of the activity which is behind it and which we do not see. And there is a difference in time. An activity which may have taken place 12 hours earlier is now visible in color on the outer plane. This is also the explanation of the effect of dreams on life. Of something that one has seen in a dream at night, one may perhaps see the effect in the morning, or even a week later. This shows that there is some activity which takes place behind the scenes. And it is reflected on the outer life according to how the activities of the outer life are directed. This is the reason why a seer or mystic is very often able to know beforehand his own condition and the condition of others, what is coming or what is past, or what is going on at a distance. For he knows the language of sound and color. And now the question is, on which plane does he know the language of sound and color? In what way does it manifest to him? One cannot restrict it by a certain law, yet at the same time it follows a certain law. And where does he see it? He sees it in his breath. Therefore, the whole culture of spiritual development is based upon the science of breath. What made the yogis, the mystics, able to see happenings of the past, present and future? Some law behind creation. A certain working of the mechanism, which is a finer mechanism. And how can it be seen? By opening one's vision to oneself. According to the mystics, there are 5 capacities of one's being, which may be called 5 akashas. The one capacity which everybody knows and is conscious of is what may be called the receptacle of food, the body. And the other, which is more or less recognized, is the receptacle of the sense, which resides in the sense. And the third capacity is a world in itself, where one is conscious of the finer forces of life, which are working within oneself. They can convey to one a sense of the past, present and future, for the reason that they are clear to one's vision. One sees them. But you may ask, how can someone find out the condition of another? It is not because he knows more about others, for a person is made to know most about himself. But many are unconscious of the third receptacle, that of life. The one who is conscious of this receptacle of life is able to empty the capacity he has and make it possible for the life of another person to reflect upon it. He does it by focusing his mind upon the life of another, and by that he discovers that past, present and future. Only he has to put the camera in the right place. It is exactly like photography. The plate is there. It is clear because its own capacity is empty. And the black cloth which the photographer puts over the camera and over his own head is concentration. When man has mastered concentration, he becomes the photographer. He can focus all the light upon one spot. It is all scientific when we understand it in this way. It only becomes a puzzle when it is put before us as a mystery. Everything is a mystery when we do not know it. When we know it, everything is simple. The true seekers after truth are lovers of simplicity. The right road is simple, clear, distinct. There is nothing vague about it. And the more one follows this path of the mystery of life, the more life is revealed to one. Life begins to express its secret, its nature. What is required of man is an honest following of life's law. Nothing in this world is more important than the knowledge of human nature and the study of human life, and this study lies in the study of self. It is the study of self which is really the study of God. 2. Both from the point of view of the Sufi and that of all mystics, the original state of the whole creation is vibration, and vibration manifests in two forms, or stages. In its original condition, vibration is inaudible and invisible, but in its first stage towards manifestation it becomes audible, and in its next step visible. In its audible stage it is called nada in Vedantic terms, a word which means sound, or nada Brahma, which represents sound the creator, sound the creative spirit. The next stage is called jata nada, a word which means light. It is the different degrees of that light and their comparison with one another which give rise to the various colors. Colors are only the different shades of light. Compared with one another they are colors, but in reality the light makes all colors. This is shown by the light of the sun, which has no particular color of its own, but the light of which plants partake manifests in the colors of their flowers. These colors seem to be the colors of flowers, vegetables and leaves, whereas in reality they are the colors of the sun. In the case of souls, we may also realize that the manifestation of such a variety among them is an illusion too. One forgets that all the various faces and endless forms of human beings belong to one spirit and are the manifestations of that one spirit. When one begins to understand the theory of color and sound, one can begin to understand that too. For instance, what is sound? The different notes are the various degrees of breath. Human breath, or the echo coming from a vessel, an instrument, or a bell, for that also is breath, the breath of human beings, as well as the breath of objects. From the one breath many sounds manifest, so that takes one back again to the idea of unity. All this variety of colors and forms and sounds proceeds from one single source. Associated with this there is the question of the mysticism of number. This is the idea of rhythm. Every movement must have its rhythm. There cannot be movement without rhythm. By rhythm we imagine the intervals of time, such as hour or minute, or in music crochet, quarter note, quaver, eighth note, semibreve, whole note. All these arise from our habit of dividing time into rhythm. We do this because our life itself depends on rhythm. The beating of the pulse, of the heart, in the head all show life's rhythm. The science of numbers comes from the science of rhythm. A certain number comes to denote a certain duration of time. Every action or movement requires a certain time and has a corresponding effect. Every effect which is produced by color, sound or number depends upon their harmonious or inharmonious effect. If the sound is not harmonious, it has not a desirable effect upon us. If a color is not harmonious, it also has an undesirable effect. This shows that it is not the particular number or sound which gives the desirable effect, but the harmony. That is why a knowledge of the effect of sound, color or number is insufficient without a development of a sense of harmony in oneself, so that one can understand the harmonious effect of these things. The mystics have seen 5 tattvas, or elements, working behind both the sound and the rhythm, although musicians consider 7 notes in a scale. The original scale known to the mystics had 5 numbers, and there were 5 kinds of scales among the ancient people, with 5 different classes of rhythm. They took 5 colors to represent the 5 elements. People often say, "This color is lucky and that one is unlucky. This number is lucky and that one is unlucky." But it is not the particular color or number in itself, it is the harmony of the situation which is lucky or unlucky. In what relation do that particular number and color stand to you, to your life's affairs, your own constitution, your stage of evolution? If they stand in harmony with your life, then they are harmonious and lucky. If not, they are inharmonious and unlucky. This does not mean that a particular color is inharmonious, it is just how it stands in your life that decides whether it is harmonious or not. So it is with sounds. But the power of sound is greater than the power of color. Why is this? It is because sound arises from the depth of one's being, and because sound can also touch the depth of one's being. The mantra yoga of the Hindus is based on this principle. The Sufi term for this is zikr. That is the use of words for the unfoldment of the soul. But it is not merely for bringing about any desired result that words can be used in zikr. People often make the mistake of using the word without any spiritual idea behind it, simply for the attainment of some magical power. The Sufis of all ages have warned against this mistake and have constantly taught that there is only one object worth striving for, the essential object of life, namely God. It is only when the science of words is being used for the attainment of truth, that is, for the attainment of God, that it is being used in the right manner. To use it for any other purpose whatever is just like paying out pearls to buy pebbles. We must remember the teaching of Christ, how he says, "Render to Caesar the things that are Caesar's and to God the things that belong to God." In other words, give to the world what belongs to the world, and give to God what belongs to God, namely, love, worship, reverence, devotion, trust, confidence. All those are due to God, so give them to God. That which belongs to the world is wealth, money, service, sympathy, kindness, tolerance, forgiveness. All these are due to the world, so give them to the world. We only make a mistake when we give to the world what is for God, and when we do for God what belongs to the world. For instance, when a man flatters another man, and when man depends upon a human being instead of depending upon God. All those things which belong to God and are due to God we fail to give him, and give them to man instead. When all things which we gain are used for a selfish purpose, we at once become confronted with difficulties, troubles and disappointments. That is why the same mystical science may be used as a means of attaining God, or may be abused by turning it into a way called black magic. It is not that there is something special called black magic, or that there is something else called white magic. Magic is all one and the same. It is how we use it that makes the difference. It is the use of it which makes it right or wrong, good or bad. A question may be asked regarding the mysticism of color and sound. Can we get our individual color or note? The answer is that in the first place it is not a matter of our own color being good for us. It is whether a number or color is in harmony with us or not that makes it good or not. In the second place, at every moment of our life our evolution changes. A person who was a thief yesterday is not a thief today. So also a given number or color belonging to us at one moment does not belong to us at another moment, it changes every moment. Therefore, to restrict oneself to a certain number or color is like tying one's feet with a chain, so that no more progress can take place. In the third place, were we to settle upon a particular number or color, we might induce a tendency to superstition in our nature, and this we must always avoid. We would always be thinking, what is the number of the house we are going to live in? What is the color of the room I shall occupy? What is the color of the dress? And so on. What would it be then if the person was obliged to live in that particular house, or was obliged to occupy that room in the hotel? If the number was inharmonious, he would think everything would go wrong while staying there. While it is always well to learn everything one can, it is not good to give in to superstition. Otherwise it would be better never to have known such things at all. The whole aim of the Sufi is to reach to reality, and anything savoring of superstition should be avoided. What is color after all? It is an illusion. What is number? It is an illusion. What are forms? They are illusions too. It is interesting to a certain extent to know about these things and to distinguish them. It gives a certain knowledge. But since these are all illusions, how can it be worthwhile to give oneself absolutely to them, and to neglect the unfolding of the self, besides at the same time neglecting the search for the reality, the only aim of the soul? Therefore all other knowledge and all other pursuits should be given a secondary place. Our main pursuit must be after truth, believing as we do that in the truth there is God. The spiritual significance of sound and color. It seems that what science realizes in the end, mysticism realizes from the beginning, according to the saying of Christ, "First seek ye the kingdom of God, and all will be added." When one hears of the present discoveries about sound and color from the scientific point of view, one begins by being surprised. One says, what? A new discovery, something we have never heard of? It is something quite new. And yet when you open the Bible, there it says, "First was the Word, and the Word was God." And if you open the still older scriptures of the Vedanta, you read in their verses that in the Creator there was that word, or that vibration. And when we come to the Quran we read there, first there was the word be, and then it became. The religions of the world, the prophets and mystics who existed thousands of years ago, knew of these things. Today a man comes with a photographic plate and says, "Here I have a photograph of sound." This shows how important is vibration and its action upon the plate. He does not realize that it is something which has always been known, only it has been spoken of in spiritual terms. What has been spoken man does not think about. What is being spoken he thinks is something new. But when we realize, as Solomon has said, that there is nothing new under the sun, we begin to enjoy life, seeing how time after time the same wisdom is revealed to man. The one who seeks truth through science, the one who searches for it through religion, the one who finds it through philosophy, the one who finds it through mysticism, in whatever manner they seek truth, they find it in the end. Once I was introduced in New York to a scientist who was also a philosopher, and the first thing he said about his accomplishments was, "I have discovered the soul." It amused me very much that while all the scriptures, thinkers, mystics and prophets have spoken about it, this man should come and say, "I have discovered the soul." I thought, yes, that was the new discovery that we were expecting, something that we never knew. Such is the attitude of mind today, the childish attitude. When one looks into the past, the present and the future, one sees that life is eternal. And what one can discover is that which has always been discovered by those who seek. Philosophy or science, mysticism or esotericism, will all agree on one point if they touch the summit of their knowledge. And that point is that behind the whole of creation, behind the whole of manifestation, if there is any subtle trace of life that can be found, it is motion, it is movement, it is vibration. Now this motion has two aspects. And this is because we have developed two principal faculties, sight and hearing. One aspect appeals to hearing, the other to sight. The aspect of movement or vibration which appeals to our hearing is what we call audible, or sound. The aspect which appeals to our sight we call light or color, and we call it visible. In point of fact, what is the origin of all that is visible, all that is audible? It is motion, it is movement, it is vibration. It is one and the same thing. Therefore, those who can seek and trace color even in that which is audible, and which is called sound. And to those who can hear even the sound of color is audible. Is there anything that unites these two things? Yes, there is. And what is it? It is harmony. It is not a particular color which is in itself harmonious or which lacks harmony. It is the blending of that color, it is in what frame it is placed, how the color is arranged. In accordance with it, it has its effect upon the one who sees. And so it is with sound. There is not any sound which is harmonious or inharmonious in itself. It is the relation of one sound to another sound that creates harmony. Therefore, one cannot point out that this or that certain thing is harmony. Harmony is a fact. Harmony is the result of the relation between color and color, the relation between sound and sound, and the relation between color and sound. The most interesting aspect of this knowledge is how different colors appeal to different people, and how different people enjoy different sounds. The more one studies this, the more one finds its relation with the particular advancement of a man's evolution. For instance, one will find that at a certain stage of one's evolution, one loved a certain color, and then one lost contact with that color. With one's growth and evolution in life, one begins to like some other color. It also depends upon a person's condition, whether he is emotional, passionate, romantic, warm or cold, whether sympathetic or disagreeable. Whatever be his emotional condition, in accordance with that he has his likes or dislikes in colors. It is that which makes it easy for the seer, for the knower, to read the character of man even before having seen his face, by only seeing his clothes. His preference for a certain color expresses what the person is like, and what is his liking. His liking for a certain flower, his liking for a certain gem or jewel, his liking for a certain environment in his room, the color on his wall, all that shows what a person is like, what is his preference. And as man evolves spiritually through life, so his choice of color changes. With each step forward he changes. His ideas about color become different. There are some to whom striking colors appeal, to others pale colors. The reason is that the striking colors have intense vibrations, and the pale colors have smooth and harmonious vibrations, and it is according to the emotional condition of man that he enjoys different colors. It is the same with sound. Every person, whether he knows it or not, has a predilection for a certain sound. Although most people do not study this subject and therefore man usually remains ignorant of the idea, yet every person has a special liking for a certain sound. This explains the saying or belief that each person has his note. The fact is that each person has his sound, a sound which is akin to his particular evolution. Besides all the divisions that have been made, such as tenor, bass or baritone, each person has his particular pitch, and each person has his special note on which he speaks, and that particular note is expressive of his life's evolution, expressive of his soul, of the condition of his feelings and of his thoughts. It not only has effect upon people to hear certain sounds and to see certain colors, but it also has effect upon animals. Colors have a great effect and influence upon all living creatures, animals or birds or human beings. Without their knowing it, the influence of colors works in their lives, turning them to this or that inclination. Once I was visiting a house which had been taken by a certain club, and one of the members told me, "It is a very great pity, since we have taken this house, there is always disagreement in our committee." I said, "No wonder. I see it." They asked, "Why?" I said, "The walls are red, they make you inclined to fight. A striking color from all around gives you the inclination to disagree. The emotions are touched by it, and certainly those inclined to disagreement are helped by it." And it is from this psychological point of view that one finds in the East the ancient custom, especially at weddings, of a certain color being chosen for the time of wedding and certain colors for other times and festivities. It all has its meaning. It has a psychological significance at the back of it. Since both color and sound are perceived differently, and we have different senses to perceive them, we have made a distinction between visible and audible things. But in reality, those who meditate, who concentrate, who enter within themselves, those who trace the origin of life, begin to see that behind these outer five senses, there is one sense hidden. And this sense is capable of doing everything which we seem to do or to experience. We distinguish five external senses. They are five because we know five organs of sense. But in reality, there is only one sense. It is that sense which through these five different organs experiences life and distinguishes life in five different forms. And so all that is audible and all that is visible is one and the same. It is this which is called in Sanskrit Purusha and Prakriti, and in the terms of the Sufis, Zat and Sifat. The manifested aspect is called Sifat, the outer appearance. It is in the manifestation as Sifat that one sees the distinction or the difference between what is visible and what is audible. In their real aspect of being, they are one and the same. According to Sufi mystics, the plane of existence where they are one and the same is called Zat, that knowledge of the inner existence in which one sees the source and goal of all things. Color and sound are a language which can be understood, not only in the external life, but also in the inner life. For the physician and the chemist, color has a great significance. The deeper one goes into the science of medicine and of chemistry, the more one recognizes the value of color. And that each element and the development or change of each object is distinguishable by the changing of color. The physicians of old used to recognize diseases by the color of the face and the body. Even today there are physicians whose principal way of recognizing a man's complaint is from the color in his eyes, of the tongue, the nails, and the skin. In every condition it is color which is expressive of man's condition. Also in objects the condition and the change of the object is recognized by the change of color. The psychologists have recognized the condition of objects by their sound, and of people by their voice. What kind of person a man is, whether strong or weak, what his character is, what his inclinations are, and what his attitude is towards life, all this can be known and understood through his voice. Color and sound are not only the language by which one communicates with external life, but also the language by which one communicates with the inner life. One might ask how it is done. The answer is found in certain scientific experiments. Special plates are made, and by speaking near such a plate, one makes marks upon it with sound and with vibration. And those marks make either harmonious forms or inharmonious forms. But every person from morning till night is making an invisible form in space by what he says. He is creating invisible vibrations around him, and he is thereby producing an atmosphere. Somebody may come into the house and before he speaks you are tired of him, you wish to get rid of him. Before he has said or done anything you are finished with him, you would like him to go away. For he is creating in his atmosphere a sound and this sound is disagreeable. There may be another person with whom you feel sympathy, to whom you feel drawn, whose friendship you value, whose presence you long for. Harmony is continually created through him. That is a sound too. If this be true, then it is not only the external signs, but also the inner condition which is audible and visible. Though not visible to the eyes and not audible to the ears, yet it is audible and visible to the soul. We say, I feel his vibrations, I feel this person's presence, I feel sympathy or antipathy towards that person. There is a feeling. And a person creates a feeling without having said anything or done anything. Therefore a person whose vibration is wrong, without doing or saying anything wrong, creates the wrong atmosphere. And you find fault with him. It is most amusing to see how people may come to you with a complaint. I have said nothing, I have done nothing, and yet people dislike me and are against me. That person does not understand that it is not what he says or does. It is what one is which speaks louder than anything one says. It is being. It is life itself which is its tone, its color, its vibration. It speaks aloud. One may wonder what it is, and where it is to be found. And the answer is that what little man knows about himself is only about his body. If you ask someone to say where he is, he will point at his arm, his hand, his body. He knows little beyond that. There are many who, if asked, but where do you think you are in your body? Will say, in my brain. They limit themselves to that small physical region which is called body, thus making themselves much smaller than they really are. The truth is that man is one individual with two aspects, just like one line with two ends. If you look at the ends, it is two. If you look at the line, it is one. One end of the line is limited, the other end of the line is unlimited. One end is man, the other end is God. Man forgets that end, and knows only the end of which he is conscious. And it is the consciousness of limitation which makes him more limited. Otherwise he would have far greater means of approaching the unlimited which is within himself, which is only the other end of the same line, the line which he calls, or which he considers to be, himself. And when a mystic speaks of self-knowledge, this does not mean knowing how old one is, or how good one is or how bad, or how right or how wrong. It means knowing the other part of one's being, that deeper, subtler aspect. It is upon the knowledge of that being that the fulfillment of life depends. One might ask, how can one get closer to it? The way that has been found by those who searched after truth, those who sought after God, those who wished to analyze themselves, those who wished to sympathize with life, is one single way. And that is the way of vibrations. It is the same way as of old. By the help of sound they have prepared themselves. They made these physical atoms, which had gradually become deadened, live again by the help of sound. They have worked with the power of sound. As Zebanissa says, say continually that sacred name which will make thee sacred. The Hindus have called it mantra yoga. The Sufis have termed it wazifa. It is the power of the word which works upon each atom of the body, making it sonorous, making it a medium of communication between the external life and the inner life. What one realizes as the first experience of one's spiritual development is that one begins to feel in communion with living beings. Not only with human beings, but with animals, with birds, with trees and with plants. It is not a fairy tale that the saints used to speak with the trees and the plants. You can speak today with them if you are in communication. It was not only the ancient times which were thus blessed with the old blessing. The old blessing is not old today, it is new. It is the same ancient one that was, that is, and that will be. And no privilege was ever limited to any period of the world's history. Man has the same privilege today if he will realize that he is privileged. When he himself closes his heart, when he allows himself to be covered by the life within and without, no doubt he becomes exclusive, no doubt he is cut off from the whole of manifestation, which is one whole and is not divided. It is man himself who divides himself. For life is undivided, indivisible. And it is opening the communication with external life which makes man wider. Then, he does not say of his friend, "This is my friend, I love him," but he says, "This is myself, I love him." When he has reached this point, he can say that he has arrived at the realization of love. As long as he says, "I feel sympathy with him because he is my friend," his sympathy has not yet been fully wakened. The real wakening of his sympathy is on that day when he sees his friend and says this is himself. Then the sympathy is wakened. Then there is the communication within oneself. Man does not close himself only from external life, but also from the inner part, which is still more important. That inner part is also sound, that inner part is light. And when one realizes this, one knows that language which is the language of heaven, a language which is expressive of the past and the present and the future, a language which reveals the secret and the character of nature, a language which is always receiving and giving the divine message which the prophets have tried at times to reveal. The psychic influence of music. In the field of music there is much to be explored, and the psychological influence of music seems little known to modern science. We are taught that the influence of music, or of sound and vibration, comes to us and touches the senses from without, but there is one question which remains. What is the source of the influence that comes from within? The real secret of the psychological influence of music is hidden in that source, the source where sound comes from. It is plain and easy to understand that the voice has a certain psychological value, that one voice differs from another, and that every voice expresses its psychological value and has its psychological power. Very often one feels the personality of one who is talking at a distance over the telephone. A sensitive person can feel the effect of the voice alone, without seeing the speaker. And many do not depend so much on words, as upon the voice that is speaking the words. This shows that psychological development is expressed in speaking, and more especially in singing. In Sanskrit, breath is called prana, the very life. And what is voice? Voice is breath. If there is anything in life, in man's constitution, which may be called life, it is the breath. And the sound of the voice is breath manifested outwardly. Therefore, a person can best express himself in song or in what he says. If there is anything in the world that can give expression to the mind and the feelings, it is the voice. Very often it happens that a person speaks on a certain subject with 1,000 words, and it has no influence, yet another person who expresses a thought in a few words can make a deep impression. This shows that the power is not in the words, but in what is behind the words, that is, in the psychological power in the voice which comes from prana. According to its strength, it impresses the listener. The same thing is found in the fingertips of the violinist and in the lips of the flute player. According to the influence coming from his thought, the musician produces that influence through his instrument. He may be very skillful, but if his fingertips do not produce a feeling of life, he will not be a success. Apart from the music he plays, there is the value of the prana or psychological power that he gives to what he plays. In India there are veena players who do not need to play a symphony in order to exert an influence, in order to produce a spiritual phenomenon. They only have to take the veena in their hand and strike one note. As soon as they strike one note, it penetrates through and through. In striking one or two notes, they have tuned the audience. The sound works on all the nerves. It is like playing on the lute which is in every heart. Their instrument becomes simply a source, the response to which is found in the heart of every person, friend and foe alike. Let the most antagonistic person come before a real veena player, and he cannot keep his antagonism. As soon as the notes have touched that person, he cannot prevent the vibrations which are created in him. He cannot help becoming a friend. Therefore, in India such players are often called, instead of musician, veena magician. Their music is magic. A really musical soul is someone who has forgotten himself in music, just as a real poet is someone who forgets himself in poetry, and a worldly soul is someone who has lost himself in the world. And godly is the soul who has forgotten himself in God. All the great musicians, Beethoven, Wagner, and many others who have left to the world a work which will always be treasured, would not have been able to do so if they had not forgotten themselves in their work. They altogether lost the idea of their own being, and in that way they deepened and became one with the thing they had come to give to the world. The key to perfection is to be found in forgetting the self. There are different ways of listening to music. There is a technical state, when a person who is developed in technique and has learned to appreciate better music feels disturbed by a lower grade of music. But there is a spiritual way, which has nothing to do with technique. It is simply to tune oneself to the music. Therefore, the spiritual person does not worry about the grade of the music. No doubt, the better the music, the more helpful it is for a spiritual person, but at the same time one must not forget that there are lamas in Tibet who do their concentrations and meditations while moving a kind of rattle, the sound of which is not specially melodious. They cultivate thereby that sense which raises a person by the help of vibration to the higher planes. There is nothing better than music as a means for the upliftment of the soul. No doubt the power of music depends upon the grade of spiritual evolution that a person has touched. There is a story of Tansen, the great musician at the court of Akbar. The emperor asked him, "Tell me, O great musician, who was your teacher?" He replied, "Your Majesty, my teacher is a very great musician, but more than that, I cannot call him musician, I must call him music." The emperor asked, "Can I hear him sing?" Tansen answered, "Perhaps, I may try. But you cannot think of calling him here to the court." The emperor said, "Can I go to where he is?" The musician said, "His pride may revolt even there, thinking that he is to sing before a king." Akbar said, "Shall I go as your servant?" Tansen answered, "Yes, there is hope then." So both of them went up into the Himalayas, into the high mountains, where the sage had his temple of music in a cave, living with nature, in tune with the infinite. When they arrived, the musician was on horseback, and Akbar walking. The sage saw that the emperor had humbled himself to come to hear his music, and he was willing to sing for him, and when he felt in the mood for singing, he sang. And his singing was great, it was a psychic phenomenon and nothing else. It seemed as if all the trees and plants of the forest were vibrating, it was a song of the universe. The deep impression made upon Akbar and Tansen was more than they could stand. They went into a state of trance, of rest, of peace. And while they were in that state, the master left the cave. When they opened their eyes, he was not there. The emperor said, "Oh, what a strange phenomenon. But where has the master gone?" Tansen said, "You will never see him in this cave again. For once a man has got a taste of this, he will pursue it, even if it costs him his life. It is greater than anything in life." When they were home again, the emperor asked the musician one day, "Tell me, what raga, what mode did your master sing?" Tansen told him the name of the raga and sang it for him, but the emperor was not content, saying, "Yes, it is the same music, but it is not the same spirit." "Why is this?" The musician replied, "The reason is this, that while I sing before you, the emperor of this country, my master sings before God, that is the difference." If we study life today, in spite of the great progress of science, the radio, telephone, gramophone, and all the wonders of this age, yet we find that the psychological aspect of music, poetry and art does not seem to develop as it should. On the contrary, it is going backward. And if we ask what is the reason, the answer will be, in the first place, that the whole progress of humanity today is a mechanical progress, and this hinders the progress of individualism. A musician has to submit to the laws of harmony and counterpoint. If he takes one step differently from the others, his music is questioned. When in Russia, I asked Taneyev, a very great musician, who was the teacher of Scriabin, what he thought of Debussy's music. He said, "I cannot understand it. It seems that we are restricted by uniformity so that there is no scope. And you will find the same thing in the medical and scientific worlds. But in art especially, where the greatest freedom is necessary, one is restricted by uniformity. Painters and musicians cannot get their work recognized. They must follow the crowd, instead of following the great souls. And everything that is general is commonplace, because the great mass of the people are not highly cultured. Things of beauty and good taste are understood, enjoyed and appreciated by few, and it is not easy for the artists to reach those few. In this way, what is called uniformity has become a hindrance to individual development. What is necessary today is that in children's education the psychological value of music should be taught. That is the only hope, the only way in which we can expect better results as time goes on. Children learning music should not only know the music, but they should know what is behind it and how it should be presented. Of course, there are two sides to this question: outward conditions and the presentation of the art. Outward conditions may be more or less helpful. Music or a song performed before 2 or 3 people who are congenial, sympathetic, harmonious, understanding and responsive, brings quite a different vibration, creates a different effect from the same music or song played before 500 people. What does this mean? It means that some people are like instruments. When good music is presented before them, they respond, they become attuned to it, they are all music. They take a share in the music, and therefore a phenomenon is created. And this phenomenon can reach even the highest ideal that is to be expected of music, which is the realization of the soul's freedom, what is called nirvana or mukti in the East, and salvation in the Christian world. For there is nothing in this world which can help one spiritually more than music. Meditation prepares, but music is the highest for touching perfection. I have seen wonders happen through the psychological power of music, but only when there were congenial surroundings. 5 or 6 people, a moonlight night, or dawn, or sunset. It seems that nature helps to complete the music, and both work together, for they are one. If a great opera singer or violin soloist has to play before 10,000 people, with all his ability he cannot touch every soul there. It depends upon the greatness of the artist, of course. The greater the artist, the more he will reach. But he has to consider what will please his audience, not what will be pleasing to God. When music becomes commercial, its beauty is lost, and also much of its value. There was a time in the East when every effort was made by the aristocracy of India to keep the art of music from being commercialized, and they were successful for some time in doing so. Musicians were not paid a fixed sum of money. Their needs were supplied even though they were extravagant. Musicians felt that they should have the surroundings of harmony and beauty. They were generous, and their doors were always open to others. They were always in debt, but their debts were paid by the king. Besides this, the musician was not restricted by a program. He was left to feel by his intuition what people wanted. He had to decide at the moment he saw them, and as he went on playing or singing he knew more. The chemical effect of the listeners' minds told him what they wanted, and the result was a spiritual feast. The secret of all magnetism, whether expressed through personality or through music, is life. It is life which charms, which is attractive. What we are always seeking for is life, and it is lack of life, which may be called lack of magnetism. And if musical teaching is given on this principle, it will be most successful in its psychological results. It is on the health of the physical body, on thought, on imagination, and on the heart, which is very often cold and frozen, that psychology depends, and it is this life which one expresses through one's fingertips on the violin, through one's voice when singing. What the world is seeking, what human souls yearn for, is that life, whether it comes through music, color, lines, or words. What everyone desires is life. It is life which is the real source of healing. Music can heal, if life is put into it. There is no great secret about this, if only a person is able to understand the truth in its simplicity. When a person plays mechanically, the fingers running about the piano or violin almost automatically, it may create a temporary effect, but it soon passes. Music which heals the soul is music with a soothing effect. One can produce a soothing effect or a harsh effect, and this depends not only on the musician, but upon the composer also, upon the mood that has inspired him. A person aware of the psychological effect of music will find it easy to understand what mood the composer was in when he wrote. If he has put life and beauty into his music, it will still prove to be beautiful and life-giving, even after 1,000 years. No doubt study and qualifications help him to express himself better, but what is really needed is that life which comes from the expanded consciousness, from the realization of the divine light which is the secret of all true art, and which is the soul of all mysticism. Composition is an art rather than a mechanical arrangement of notes. A composer of music performs his small part in the scheme of nature as a creator. Music being the most exalted of arts, the work of the composer of music is no less than the work of a saint. It is not only the knowledge of technicality, of harmony, of theory that is sufficient. The composer needs tenderness of heart, open eyes to all beauty, the conception of what is beautiful, the true perception of sound and rhythm, and its expression in human nature. By composing music, a composer must create his own world in sound and rhythm. His work, therefore, is not a labor, it is a joy of the highest order. If the composer writes music because he is obliged to write something, that is not the thing to do. The composer should write when his heart feels like writing, when his heart is singing, when his soul is dancing, when his whole being is vibrating harmony. That is the time that he should write music. Question: is it a distinct disadvantage for a human being to be born without a good ear? Answer: it is, because what is received through the ears goes deeper into the soul than what is received through any other way. Neither by smelling, or tasting, or seeing does beauty enter so deeply into oneself as by hearing. Question: as music is the means to perfection, are unmusical persons imperfect? Answer: to play or sing oneself and to listen to music are two different things. A person may become a musician by learning music theoretically and mechanically, but only he is really a musician who lives in music and loses himself in music. All people have music in them, in the rhythm and harmony of their actions and life. If a musician has the desire for spiritual perfection, I think that he can perfect himself much more easily and quickly than another person. The healing power of music. The idea of healing through music really belongs to the initial stage of developing through the art of music. The end of this is attaining through music, or as it is called in the Vedanta, samadhi. In the first place, if we saw what was at the back of all the medicines which are used for healing purposes, if we ask what it is in them that heals, we shall find that it is the different elements which constitute our physical being. The same elements are present in those medicines, and that which is lacking in us is taken from them, or the effect which should be produced in our body is produced by them. The vibration which is necessary for our health is created in the body by their power. The rhythm which is necessary for our cure is brought about by bringing the circulation of the blood into a certain rhythm and speed. By this we learn that health is a condition of perfect rhythm and tone. And what is music? Music is rhythm and tone. When the health is out of order, it means the music is out of order. Therefore, when the music is not right in us, the help of harmony and rhythm is very necessary to bring us into a state of harmony and rhythm. This way of healing can be studied and understood by studying the music of one's own life, by studying the rhythm of the pulse, the rhythm of the beating of the heart and of the head. Physicians who are sensitive to the rhythm determine the condition of the patient by examining the rhythm of the pulse, the beating of the heart, the rhythm of the circulation of the blood. And to find a real complaint, a physician, with all his material knowledge, must depend upon his intuition and upon the use of his musical qualities. In ancient times, and even now in the East, we find two principal schools of medicine. One which came from the ancient Greek school through Persia, the other which came from the Vedanta and is founded on mysticism. And what is mysticism? It is the law of vibration. Good health is induced by understanding the nature of a complaint through the rhythm and tone that can be perceived in the human body, and by regulating the body through rhythms and tones, according to one's understanding of their proportions. Besides this, there is another way of looking at it. Every illness apparently has its special reason, but in reality all illnesses come from one reason, from one cause, from one condition. That is the absence of life, the lack of life. Life is health. Its absence is illness, which culminates in what we call death. Life in its physical form, as perceived in the physical spheres, is called prana in Sanskrit. This life is given by food or medicine, or the body is prepared by a certain food or medicine to be able to breathe in this life itself, in order that it may be in better health or may experience perfect health. But this prana, which also means breath, the central breath, attracts from space all the different elements which are there, as the herbs and plants and flowers and fruits all attract from space the same element which they represent. All these elements are attracted by the breath. Therefore, the mystics, whether from Greece, Persia, or India, have always taken as their basis of spiritual evolution the culture of breath, the science of breath. Even now you will see in the East healers who magnetize water or food or the atmosphere. What is the secret of their magnetism? It is their breath. It is the influence of their breath upon water or food. The religious people of India have a ceremony where something like a sacrament is given by a holy person to someone who is suffering, and it is very helpful. Their power of breath is so balanced, so purified and developed, that it attracts all elements, all that one can get from an herb, a flower, or fruit, and even more. Therefore, their breath can achieve 1,000 times more than what medicine can do. There are healers in the East who whisper some spiritual words, but what is whispering? It is breath again. Breath with words directed through it. There was a physician in Delhi who mostly used this kind of healing power with his patients, and one day a skeptical friend came to consult with him. The physician whispered a few sacred words before the patient and said, "Now you may go." This skeptical man said he could not understand how such a method could have any effect on his health. The physician then did something unusual for him. He offended the man by speaking very harshly to him. The man became very angry and said to him, "How can you, a physician, say such words to me?" The physician said, "I hardly ever do such a thing, and I only did it to prove something to you. If my words can make you angry and ill, they can also cure you. If words can make one ill and upset, they also have the power to harmonize a patient, and to put him into a good condition. What is music? According to the ancient Indian thinkers, there are three aspects of music: singing, playing, and dancing. All three represent rhythm, and all three represent tone in some form or other. And what is the effect of music? The effect of music is to regulate the rhythm of another person and to tune a person to the music that is being performed. What secret is there in music which attracts all those who listen to it? It is the rhythm which is being created. It is the tone of that music which tunes a soul and raises it above depression and despair of everyday life in this world. And if one knew what rhythm was needed for a particular individual in his trouble and despair, what tone was needed, and to what pitch that person's soul should be raised, one would then be able to heal him with music. One might ask why it is, if music is rhythm, that so often musicians are temperamental and easily disturbed. But is it not beautiful to have a little temperament? Life is unmusical when there is no temperament. A person who does not get angry once in a while does not live. It is human to have all kinds of minor faults. The joy is in overcoming these faults. Music is not all sadness. There are higher octaves and lower octaves. Music is all. Music takes in all. That is why music is even greater than heaven. There was a time in India when music was much used for healing. It was used as healing for the mind, for the character, and for the soul, because it is health of the soul that brings health to the physical body. But healing of the physical body does not always help the soul. That is why the material medical science, though it can do good for some time, does not entirely suffice the need of the patient. I do not mean by this that outward treatment is useless. There is nothing in this world which is useless, if we only knew how to make use of it. All things in this world are needed, all things have their benefit and use, if we only know how to use them properly. But if a cure is brought about outwardly, while inwardly the illness remains, sooner or later the illness which is buried in the body will come out and show itself. Once I met a lady who said she had been to many physicians for the complaint of neuritis. She was temporarily cured, but it always came back, and she asked me for something that would help her. I said to her, "Is there anyone in the world whom you dislike, whom you hate, or whose action is troubling your mind?" She said, "Yes, there are many people whom I dislike, and especially there is one person whom I cannot forgive." "Well," I said, "that is the root of the disease. Outwardly it is a pain of the body. Inwardly it is rooted in the heart. Often the cause of illness is within. Although, no doubt, many things are caused outwardly. No single rule will cover everything. Undoubtedly, as things have changed in the world and materialism has spread throughout the world, this has influenced things, not only in the West, but in the East also. The use of music for spiritual attainment and healing of the soul, which was prevalent in ancient times, is not found to the same extent now. Music has been made a pastime, the means of forgetting God instead of realizing God. And it is the use one makes of things which constitutes their fault or virtue. Still, the remembrance of the ancient use of music remains among the poor in India. There are healers there who have a particular instrument of healing on which they play. And there are people who go to them for healing. And by playing that instrument they arouse some special feeling which had become cold, and that deep feeling which was buried begins to come out. It is really the old way of psychoanalysis. Music helps that patient to express in full the hidden influence which was there. In this way many people are helped without going to a physician. But it is no doubt a crude way of healing. Once the Maharaja of Baroda, on hearing that healing could be accomplished through music, introduced concerts in certain hospitals, and the amusing result was that all those who were suffering began to cry out, "For God's sake, keep quiet. Go away." That was not the music to soothe them. It only made them suffer more. It was like giving a stone for bread. In order to give healing through music, one must study what is needed, what is wanted. In the first place, one must study what the complaint is. What elements are lacking? What is its symbolical meaning? What mental attitude is behind the illness? Then, after a close study, one can do a great deal of good to the patient with the help of music. Even if music were not used as a prescription, particularly intended for a certain illness, the power of that illness, which has its abode in the heart of man, can still be reduced by lifting up his heart, by changing his thought. What brings illness is the thought of illness rather than the illness itself. The existence of illness in the body may be called a shadow of the true illness which is held by man in his mind. By the power of music the mind may become exalted so that it rises above the thought of illness. Then the illness is forgotten. And you will ask, what kind of music can heal man? Is it singing or playing, or music for dancing? Singing is the most powerful. For singing is living, it is prana. The voice is life itself. No doubt it is also life which is working through an instrument by the touch. But in singing it is the direct life, the breath touching the heart of the listener. However, behind this voice there must be a heart charged like a battery with what is needed. And with what is it charged? With what we call love and sympathy. The greatest power there is. A person who is material, who is struggling for himself from morning till evening, who is seeking his own benefit, who is in trouble or bitter, who is in the midst of conflict, cannot heal. The healer must be free. Free to sympathize, free to love his fellow man even more than himself. What teaches this love? Where can one learn it? Where can one get it? The key to this love element is God. And when we look at life today with all its progress, what is lacking? It is God. God is the key to that unlimited store of love which is in the heart of man. Once a very godly and good-natured housemaid was not able to answer a knock at the door as quickly as it should have been answered. And the lady visitor who was waiting at the door became very impatient and spoke crossly to her. When asked what had happened, the maid was not upset at all. She smiled and said, "Yes, that lady was very cross with me." And when she was asked if she knew what was the matter with the lady and what made her cross, the maid with perfect innocence replied, "The reason. There was no God." A beautiful answer. Where God is lacking, there is no love. Wherever there is love, there is God. If we interpret rightly, what causes pain and suffering is the lack of life. What is life? It is love. And what is love? It is God. What every individual needs, what the world needs, is God. All we need to attain, all we need to gain, to bless our lives by music, by harmony, by love, by the science of right tuning, by a life of good, is God. This is the central theme of all good. Spiritual development by the aid of music. The word spiritual does not apply to goodness, or to wonderworking, the power of producing miracles, or to great intellectual power. The whole of life in all its aspects is one single music. The real spiritual attainment is to tune oneself to the harmony of this perfect music. What is it that keeps man back from spiritual attainment? It is the denseness of this material existence and the fact that he is unconscious of his spiritual being. His limitations prevent the free flow and movement which is the nature and character of life. Take for instance this denseness. There is a rock, and you want to produce sound from it, but it does not give any resonance. It does not answer your desire to produce sound. String or wire, on the contrary, will give an answer to the tone you want. You strike them and they answer. There are objects which give resonance. You wish to produce sound in them, and they respond. They make your music complete. And so it is with human nature. One person is heavy and dull. You tell him something, but he cannot understand. You speak to him, but he will not hear. He will not respond to music, to beauty, or to art. What is it? It is denseness. There is another person who is ready to appreciate and understand music and poetry, or beauty in any form, in character or in manner. Beauty is appreciated in every form by such a person, and it is this which is the awakening of the soul, which is the living condition of the heart. It is this which is the real spiritual attainment. Spiritual attainment is making the spirit alive, becoming conscious. When man is not conscious of soul and spirit, but only of his material being, he is dense. He is far removed from spirit. What is spirit and what is matter? The difference between spirit and matter is like the difference between water and ice. Frozen water is ice and melted ice is water. It is spirit in its denseness which we call matter. It is matter in its fineness which may be called spirit. Once a materialist said to me, "I do not believe in any spirit or soul or hereafter. I believe in eternal matter." I said to him, "Your belief is not very different from mine. Only that which you call eternal matter I call spirit. It is a difference in terms. There is nothing to dispute about because we both believe in eternity, and so long as we meet in eternity, what difference does it make if the one calls it matter and the other calls it spirit? It is one life from beginning to end. Beauty is born of harmony." What is harmony? Harmony is right proportion, in other words, right rhythm. And what is life? Life is the outcome of harmony. At the back of the whole creation is harmony, and the whole secret of creation is harmony. Intelligence longs to attain to the perfection of harmony. What man calls happiness, comfort, profit or gain, all he longs for and wishes to attain is harmony. In a smaller or greater degree, he is longing for harmony. Even in attaining the most mundane things, he always wishes for harmony. But very often he does not adopt the right methods. Very often his methods are wrong. The object attained by both good and bad methods is the same, but the way one tries to attain it makes it right or wrong. It is not the object which is wrong, it is the method one adopts to attain it. No one, whatever his station in life, wishes for disharmony, for all suffering, pain and trouble is lack of harmony. To obtain spirituality is to realize that the whole universe is one symphony, in this every individual is one note, and his happiness lies in becoming perfectly attuned to the harmony of the universe. It is not following a certain religion which makes one spiritual, or having a certain belief, or being a fanatic in regard to one idea, or even by becoming too good to live in this world. There are many good people who do not even understand what spirituality means. They are very good, but they do not yet know what ultimate good is. Ultimate good is harmony itself. For instance, all the different principles and beliefs of all the religions of the world, taught and proclaimed by priests and teachers, but which man is not always able to follow and express, come naturally from the heart of someone who attunes himself to the rhythm of the universe. Every action, every word he speaks, every feeling he has, every sentiment he expresses, is harmonious. They are all virtues, they are all religion. It is not following a religion, it is living a religion, making one's life a religion, which is necessary. Music is a miniature of the whole harmony of the universe, for the harmony of the universe is life itself, and man, being a miniature of the universe, shows harmonious and inharmonious chords in his pulsation, in the beat of his heart, in his vibration, rhythm and tone. His health or illness, his joy or discomfort, all show the music or lack of music in his life. And what does music teach us? Music helps us to train ourselves in harmony, and it is this which is the magic or secret behind music. When you hear music that you enjoy, it tunes you and puts you in harmony with life. Therefore man needs music, he longs for music. Many say that they do not care for music, but these have not heard music. If they really heard music, it would touch their souls, and then certainly they could not help loving it. If not, it would only mean that they had not heard music sufficiently, and had not made their heart calm and quiet in order to listen to it, and to enjoy and appreciate it. Besides, music develops that faculty by which one learns to appreciate all that is good and beautiful in the form of art and science, and in the form of music and poetry, one can then appreciate every aspect of beauty. What deprives man of all the beauty around him is his heaviness of body or heaviness of heart. He is pulled down to earth, and by that everything becomes limited, but when he shakes off that heaviness and joy comes, he feels light. All good tendencies such as gentleness and tolerance, forgiveness, love and appreciation, all these beautiful qualities, come by being light, light in the mind, in the soul and in the body. Where does music come from? Where does dance come from? It all comes from that natural and spiritual life which is within. When that spiritual life springs forth, it lightens all the burdens that man has. It makes his life smooth, as thought floating on the ocean of life. The faculty of appreciation makes one light. Life is just like the ocean. When there is no appreciation, no receptivity, man sinks like a piece of iron or stone to the bottom of the sea. He cannot float like a boat, which is hollow and which is receptive. The difficulty in the spiritual path is always what comes from ourselves. Man does not like to be a pupil, he likes to be a teacher. If man only knew that the greatness and perfection of the great ones who have come from time to this world was in their being pupils and not in teaching. The greater the teacher, the better the pupil he was. He learned from everyone, the great and the lowly, the wise and the foolish, the old and the young. He learned from their lives and studied human nature and all its aspects. Someone learning to tread the spiritual path must become like an empty cup, in order that the wine of music and harmony be poured into his heart. When a person comes to me and says, "Here I am, can you help me spiritually?" And I answer, "Yes," very often he says, "I want to know first of all what you think about life and death, or the beginning and the end." And then I wonder what his attitude will be if his previously conceived opinion does not agree with mine. He wants to learn, and yet he does not want to be empty. That means going to a stream of water with a covered cup, wanting the water, and yet the cup is covered with preconceived ideas. But where have the preconceived ideas come from? No idea can be called one's own. All ideas have been learned from one source or another, yet in time, one comes to think that they are one's own. And for those ideas one will argue and dispute, although they do not satisfy him fully, but at the same time they are his battleground, and they will continue to keep his cup covered. Mystics therefore have adopted a different way. They have learned a different course, and that course is self-effacement, or in other words, unlearning what one has learned, and this is how one can become an empty cup. In the East it is said that the first thing to be learned is how to become a pupil. One may think that in this way, one loses one's individuality, but what is individuality? Is it not what is collected? What are one's ideas and opinions? They are just collected knowledge, and this knowledge should be unlearned. One would think that the character of the mind is such that what one learns is engraved upon it. How then can one unlearn it? Unlearning is completing this knowledge. To see a person and say, "That person is wicked, I dislike him," that is learning. To see further and recognize something good in that person, to begin to like him or pity him, that is unlearning. When you see the goodness in someone you have called wicked, you have unlearned. You have unraveled that knot. First one learns by seeing with one eye, then one learns by seeing with two eyes, and that makes one's sight complete. All that we have learned in this world is partial knowledge, but when this is uprooted by another point of view, then we have knowledge in its completed form. This is what is called mysticism. Why is it called mysticism? Because it cannot be put into words. Words will show us one side of it, but the other side is beyond words. The whole manifestation is duality, the duality which makes us intelligent, and behind the duality is unity. If we do not rise beyond duality and move towards unity, we do not attain perfection, we do not attain spirituality. This does not mean that our learning is of no use. It is of great use. It gives us the power of discrimination and of discerning differences. This makes the intelligence sharp and the sight keen, so that we understand the value of things and their use. It is all part of human evolution and all useful. So we must learn first and unlearn afterwards. One does not look at the sky first when standing on the earth. First one must look at the earth and see what it offers to learn and to observe, but at the same time, one should not think that one's life's purpose is fulfilled by looking only at the earth. The fulfillment of life's purpose is in looking at the sky. What is wonderful about music is that it helps man to concentrate or meditate independently of thought, and therefore music seems to be the bridge over the gulf between form and the formless. If there is anything intelligent, effective and at the same time formless, it is music. Poetry suggests form, line and color suggest form, but music suggests no form. It creates also that resonance which vibrates through the whole being, lifting the thought above the denseness of matter. It almost turns matter into spirit, into its original condition, through the harmony of vibrations touching every atom of one's whole being. Beauty of line and color can go so far and no further, the joy of fragrance can go a little further, but music touches our innermost being, and in that way produces a new life, a life that gives exaltation to the whole being, raising it to that perfection in which lies the fulfillment of man's life. And that's not all. Our experts and regular viewers respond to all comments. Also check if you forgot to subscribe and set your bell to receive notifications about new audiobooks and other useful self-development materials that we release regularly. Join in the discussions, don't forget to give likes and, if possible and inspired, support the development of the channel financially. All useful links will be in the description and the first attached comment. Goodness, love and wisdom to all. And now move on to watch the next part of the video at the links below, or choose something from the playlists of the channel and those you see on the screen.